Well, let's talk about this. California declares drought emergency across vast swath of state. We talked a lot about political crises, but what happens? So let me slow down a second. I don't want to blame Joe Biden for everything. I think he's a bad leader. I think his policies have caused very serious problems with the economy and with the border, of course.
Yep.
I don't think we can blame him for everything having to do with Israel and Gaza. That would be insane. That conflict's been going on for a long time. But what we're looking at now with this story from California, there's a massive drought. I look at some of these photos, and I went and covered the drought several years ago when it was, in its peak. It was a disaster, and it looks worse now.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just I'm misremembering, but it seems like it's way worse. What are we going to do now when we have this pathetic president who has no ability to lead? How is he supposed to deal with his own problems of his creation and with natural disasters? Because they're already in trouble.
Yeah.
Now you add this drought. They're going to start going to other states and making demands. They're going to demand relief. They're going to demand we pay for it.
That drought that you said you covered, and I'm trying. What was that about? Probably about a decade ago.
It was, no, it was 2016. 2015, 2016.
What steps did the state of California or did America take after that drought to say, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Right? Like I said earlier on, one of the things that my challenge in this industry is that it's not always sexy. It's not titillating. It's not fun. That's another example. And this is the role of government, right? The role of government is not to police your pronouns. It is not to talk about your boys and girls in sports. These are, for good or for ill, these are the jobs we've put at the feet of our government. What has California or the country done to secure our electric grid, to secure our energy supply, or in the case of California, to secure its water supply? Because you are drought prone. You know what your population is. You know that the rain is cyclical. What have you done?
I want to make sure I highlight the other story in this, because this is about the greater natural disasters, and we have this one from express.co.uk. Solar storm traveling at 1.3 million kilometers per hour to hit Earth tomorrow.
Oh, great.
They say it could spark satellite-related issues. Sometimes when we get these storms, it causes issues with like cell phone coverage and things like that. I don't think this is the big one where all of our electronics get fried or anything, but it's just another example of outside of the political crisis and the government, to your question, not doing anything about it. And I'm not comfortable right now with a Biden presidency, a Biden administration, as we're staring down the barrel of natural disasters, Middle Eastern conflict, economic crisis, migrant crisis. I'm actually, what's the opposite of comfortable? Uncomfortable isn't
disconcerted.
That's a long word, though. Not enough.
Agitated.
I'm anxious.
Oh, yeah.
And genuinely concerned. But, I would say I'm not a particularly excitable. So when it happens, I kind of laugh, and then I go and buy a bunch of bullets. That was my reaction today. Like, I did my segments. So I do my hour and 20 minutes or so in the morning, the 3 segments, 10, 1, and 4 p.m. And afterwards, I was like, ammo.com. Let's see, 9mm. Ooh, hollow point. Let's see, 45 ACP. Oh, yeah.
And you got it, no problem. There's a lot of shortages.
Yeah. It's been a little bit better. It was really bad last year, but I was like, I'm going to buy a bunch of bullets. Nice. And then I got like some beans and rice, and I'm like, you know what, man? That's the manifestation of my anxiety watching a Biden presidency and natural disasters. I'm like, time to buy some ammo.
You're not wrong either. Historically, if you've ever heard, I want to tell you about the Sea Peoples. Have you guys ever heard of the Sea Peoples? 1200 BC.
The Sea Peoples?
Yeah, apparently this unknown culture of humans, 1200 BC, came from Asia and just flooded the Mediterranean and wiped out and murdered and destroyed all civilization essentially as we know it. They don't know why. No one really knows anything about them or where they came from or why they came, but what they think happened was a series of events. It's never the big one. It's very rarely. It's a volcano along with 3 years of famine, and then there's a flood. Or there's a war involved with a famine, and then there's a solar flare, or there's a fire, and it's all these things happening at once. That's what causes social collapse. It's not the oil alone. It's not the solar flare alone. It's not the war alone, but it's when they all conflux.
And they're all happening right now. Isn't that perfect?
At any moment, they can all happen right now. We have to be on guard for that.
And that's like why I think Biden is particularly bad for us. I understand it's like so obvious. Tim Pool criticizing Joe Biden. I get it. I think Trump had his problems, but Joe Biden is like sitting in his wheelchair with his little warm blanket in the sun, going while everything's on fire.
If Yosemite erupts, and then there's
if Yosemite erupts, we got nothing to worry about.
Yeah,
we'll be
and,
vaporized.
and there's
true.
a war
Choked out.
and a flood.
Well, we all have masks, so if
we'll be
Yosemite
fine.
erupts, we have masks.
It could
to
block
keep the
out the sun
particulate- yeah.
at the very least, other than the actual. I mean, for I don't know how long it would block out the sun. But
years.
that would destroy a crop.
So you're
rotation.
saying the secret bunker should be hermetically sealable so that we can
Yes.
go underground and
Yes,
always
indoor
said that.
farms.
prolong our suffering?
Indoor farms is a big part of
It's
it.
going to be a race to get to Mount Weather if Yellowstone and Yosemite goes up.
Also,
Where?
getting off Earth.
Mount Weather, that's the station in Virginia. It's actually right outside D.C., but that's what the government built in the case of nuclear war. Mount Weather. You can see it. It's right there on a hill. It's a secret government. It's not secret because everyone knows what it is.
Oh, but it's not a
what's,
mountain, is it?
What's happening? It's on a mountain, and it's called Mount Weather, and it's one of those. What actually happens at Mount Weather? No one knows.
Isn't that where the
but
enclave
it is a government
is? In-
bunker.
Isn't that where the enclave is in
Oh,
Fallout
no,
3?
that's awesome.
Yeah, if you go far west of the mountains and there's like yeah, that's what it is.
The thing that concerns me is I don't think we should even talk about if. It's when Yosemite erupts, because it will again in the future.
Well,
That's what volcanoes do.
It's overdue by only like 80,000 years, so
Yeah.
there's nothing to worry about.
When there's a conflux of events that causes mass catastrophe on the surface of Earth, hopefully we'll be on Mars, we'll be on the moon, we'll have space stations. But
Yeah.
where's our localized infrastructure? I don't want to rely on a pipeline. I don't want to rely on an energy source far away. I mean, where's my food, my water, my waste?
Just real quick. Yes, Mount Weather is what they used to model Raven Rock, which in Fallout 3, for those that are familiar with the game, is where the Enclave, which is the remnants of the U.S. government, are based after
Yeah,
the
makes
nuclear
sense.
apocalypse.
There you go.
Yeah.
That was a real place.
But they're not going to let you in.
Well, no, we're going to try to get in. But maybe.
They'll shoot you.
But to your point, though, absolutely. If societal collapse happens, it is every man for himself, and that is why teaching resiliency and independence is a virtue. And I feel like what we are inculcating as a culture, and I feel like what this president is doing is inculcating dependency.
Last night we were
We will
talking
take care of you.
about Africa a lot, and like I think Nigeria, how they're on crypto. And a lot of what's happened in these African countries is they've leapfrogged the last 100 years of electrical infrastructure because they didn't have a central grid, so they just immediately went to solar panel on every house. And now they all have cell phones. They
Gravity
bypass.
lights.
Yeah, they
Gravity lights.
bypass like the telephone, centralization structure. So they have cell phones, solar panels. They're using crypto. So there is potential for new societies to start with, sustainable stuff, as we can see, and the
Yeah,
gravity
absolutely.
lights.
Your
We should-
gravity lights are really cool. You ever see those?
No.
It's a series of gears, and you have a rock on a string, and you lift the rock up and let it go. And as the rock is falling, it's spinning the gears, which generate electricity.
And it falls for like
And so
12 hours.
Yeah, it takes 12 hours to go all the way down, and it lights. It turns the light on.
So it's like an old clock, like an old
Right.
clock that has a pendulum and has
Yeah. So it's just
Ah.
using a gear ratio, so that as it's spinning, it goes really slow. It spins really fast, and then
And gravity,
It's
like
amazing.
the thing about something in orbit is it's falling. Technically, when
It
you're
is,
when
yeah.
you're orbiting the Earth, you're in a state of falling. So if we could utilize that force to create electricity, I think that would be sustainable.
You couldn't, because it is falling, but it's moving forward fast enough to where it orbits. You'd have to reduce speed at some point. You can't just that would be a perpetual motion machine. It wouldn't work. You can't just get energy out of the system.
It would
without
be perpetual. It would slow down over time, but it might be slow down. It's like as the rock falls, it takes 12 hours to fall. Maybe it could take 600,000 years for it to fall back to Earth.
I see, just like orbital decay, and then you like capturing that somehow.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe seems kind of crazy.
Yep.
But maybe we'll get by a solar storm, and then it'll just get erased. Everything get wiped out.
Going back to the California droughts, I mean, there are whole countries, I'm thinking of Israel, that have mastered desalination.
Yeah, but you know what the problem with that is? I actually
Why
went.
can't we in California?
They do have one in Carlsbad. I went there. It's beautiful. It's crazy. It's a whole bunch of. It's a series of tubes, as most things are, I suppose. The internet, the oil pipelines, but they have a whole bunch of these tubes where the water runs through all of them. The problem is, there is going to be refuse, brine.
Yeah.
And we watched it. We filmed it as it poured out of these wastewater pipes. The brine sinks to the bottom and goes under the ocean water, killing everything on the ocean floor. And that causes a wave of death going all the way up. because the food chain dies. The critters that eat stuff on the floor die because there's no food anymore. The critters that eat those critters die. The critters that eat those critters that die. And then the people who go fishing can't get fish anymore. So there's a lot of things to solve with desalination. One of the issues, I suppose, is humans consuming more and more of the ocean water, changing salinity, destroying coastal areas, destroying fisheries. I don't think there's a there's a solution for infinite growth, or at least exponential growth, considering how many people there are. I think there's a certain point where we just get too many people and then we strain our ecosystem. It happens to deer. It happens to, basically every creature on the planet. Hogs, for instance, people go around in helicopters shooting hogs, just too many of them. Humans are not going to be immune from the same environmental forces that everything else on the planet is.
Yeah.
And so we got to pay attention to that. I'm not going to pretend to know the solutions, but I can tell you a lot of really crazy people are willing to do a lot of really crazy things once they get power to ensure that they get to live comfortably forever, and you are the one who is the hog being culled.
Yeah. They're the ones who have the private jets and the
That's right.
the multiple homes.
This is what I think about the climate change thing. I think a lot of these people are like, there's like a guy and he's wearing his like velvet bathrobe or whatever in the morning, and he's sipping his morning coffee with a cigar. And then he sees the newspaper and it says, due to climate change, people will lose access to these luxuries. And he goes, heavens, I have to give up my private jet? No, make everyone else give it up.
Yeah.
So he throws money and says, everyone, give up all your luxuries. Give up all your luxuries. And he goes, once they all give up their luxuries and they're flushing their toilets, and now you got to pee on the top of the toilet to flush the rest of it because we got to save water, I'll get to keep my yacht. I'll get to keep my private plane. It's better this way.
By the way, that's a wonderful accent of a rich person.
Yeah, it was good.
I mean,
I
that's flawless.
So these
Rich people naturally develop those accents.
Oh yes, of
It
course
happens.
they do.
Yes, as soon as you break your first million,
in front of your mouth.
you can watch it
changes
happen.
you.
You should go to a club and there'll be a guy and he's like, well, I'm looking at my portfolio here and it's about to cross $1 million. Oh my, it's happened. It's
Jolly good.
oh, Rufus, your voice broke. I see you've made $1 million. There's a woman and she's like, oh, you made $1 million? And he's like, you can tell, can't you?
when the rich psycho says, I need to rule all these sycophants, these people, because they're not smart enough, and then they make these decisions like if they give
Bloomberg.
up their what's that?
Bloomberg.
Yeah. So when that happens, I wonder, like, then you were talking about all these people that just can't stop eating crap, salty fast food. They can't like bring themselves to change, to become self-identified, to cook their own food, to take control of their life. Are they really like a mass of ignoramuses that need to be controlled and taken care of by a small group of highly intelligent humans? Or is that the story we're told?
That's a really good point. I think maybe you're onto something, Ian. There could be a group of people that maybe just have better ideas. It could be a reference to like enlightenment or, like a light, like an illumination. They could call themselves something like that, like Illuminati
guys or something.
The Illuminati. The Illuminati.
Yeah. The ones who know all things.
Yes. And they can tell other people how to live because as we've seen throughout history, centralization of power always is a good thing.
Yeah. If you hoard all your information on an island, then there's no chance the island will get flooded and destroyed and that the information will be lost.
Exactly.
Or in a great library, perhaps. The problem with these people is that, while I think it's true, there are a lot of really, really dumb people, and I think there are very few smarter people, centralization doesn't work. One person, a small group of people, cannot adequately plan for how a system this large will work. They've tried it over and over again. It was called communism. It clearly doesn't work. It didn't work. And I know all these commie leftists will be like, that was because the U.S. was interfering in
It
the
wasn't real communism. Yeah.
So
when they were like, starve the Ukrainians to give the Russians food because we need it more. I'm like, that's central planning.
So what makes
treating
me-
individual like trash.
That maybe thinks the problem is not that they're making people do something or making them not do something. It's that they're restraining their ability to be adaptable because you need you need to allow people to be adaptable.
Decentralization.
Strain their ability to be free. Yeah, I mean, adaptability is freedom, and then that's taken away in a centralized system.
It's interesting. Max the other day was talking about how these altcoins are like a casino. Somebody says, I put in money on this cryptocurrency, I lost money, and now I need to make it back up. So they put in a different currency and they keep losing money. I feel like a lot of the centralization we see with these wealthy individuals is they made a bet. Hey, we should do this policy and control this good. It'll make everything better. Then when it gets worse, they go, quick, do another policy. And so they keep stacking duct tape onto a thing. The problem is caused by them.
Yeah. Yeah, and you talked about how it's a series of events that lead to the ultimate collapse of society, and I think you're absolutely right. But if you look at one country in particular, and more should be written about this. Movies, you talked about doing original, creative.
Oh, we're doing it.
Movies should be written about this, and it is, in our lifetime, the story of Venezuela. I mean, in the turn of the century, this century, the year 2000, it was the wealthiest, most prosperous country in South America. It had a number of American and European engineers and doctors who lived there. Hugo Chavez did not run as saying, I'm going to destroy your country. He ran as, I'm going to bring a greater sense of equality and equity or whatever. And here we are 21 years later, and the latest statistic I saw, 78% of the population is in extreme poverty. I mean, they have the world's largest proven oil and gas oil reserves, and they have no oil.
A lot of murder, though. They got a lot of murder.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, in every single those Illuminati, those who were smart, those who were fled the country, and what is left, and who takes care of those people, and that is, I fear, the direction we are slowly headed in. It's a series of collapses.
In addition to the series of collapses, what tends to happen is it will affect one large group of people, and then those people will migrate because they're screwed, and then the migration will cause another catastrophe where they land, and they'll disrupt that populace. The sea people were the ones that were catastrophically affected by the series of events, so it seems. But the people that were murdered in the Mediterranean just suffered the fallout.
So what you're basically saying is that in these blue areas destroyed by Democrats, they're all going to flood into red areas.
We're seeing it happen.
And they're bringing their weird, race theories.
It's like a drop of it.
It's landing in schools in like West Virginia, freaking out parents. Colorado.
Yep. And that's why federalism is your best fight back, because you have so much more power at this. Power should be as concentrated at the localist level possible. And people get rid of the electoral college. I mean, without getting into the history of our founding fathers, the person who is not elected by electoral college is your governor, because that's where more power should be than the president. They never wanted the president. They never wanted D.C. to be powerful. Yep. So did the founders love democracy? They loved direct democracy because they wanted it at the most local. Your mayor is elected by direct democracy. But boy, wouldn't it be great if your mayor had more power than your governor and your governor more power than the president? But instead, there used to be an expression. My mom, I hope you're listening, Mom, she used to say it all the time, and maybe she's the last one. Don't make a federal case out of it. Oh, don't make a federal case out of it. We don't say that anymore.
Right.
Everything is now a federal case. My trans daughter can't play volleyball. Go to the Supreme Court. Holy crap, there's no other recourse. Everything gets elevated to Washington, D.C.
Well, it's like we're asking, mom and dad to solve our problems for us.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. The problem is if people live in these awful blue states, then they move to red states and then start voting blue again, and then they just, keep.
Yeah, and then maybe we'll move back to California one day and reclaim it as our own, right? I mean, there are states that were blue that have turned red, and there are states that are red that are turning blue, and I'm not going to stop migration patterns, but, California had the largest exodus in the last 10 years. Who knows? Maybe they'll drive it so far into the ground, people will start moving back to California and reclaim it.
Yeah. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.